shall I share a story? Go on then. What the hell? You know, I mentioned some pre-Islamic Arabian personalities, and you have the famous Antara. Everybody's heard of Antara. Antara ibn Shaddad. Allah labsi. All right. So if you look into pre-Islamic dons, the absolute warriors of, let's say, the top 5. I mean, you could stretch it to the top 10, but if you look them up, the top legends of pre-Islamic Arabia, Antara is one of them. Absolute warrior. So he's from before Islam. He doesn't reach Islam, but he's from that time, and you see, he's one of these people who faces a lot in his life, a lot of discrimination, a lot of struggle. He ethnically, I mean, he's an Arab, he's from Al-Ubs, but his mother was African, and so he was dark and black in complexion. So originally his father it was common that they would sideline, there was racism and things like this. So he's one of these people who faced a very racist upbringing. He was black, he was in Arabia, it was a tough time, it was very harsh surroundings. He was abandoned by his father, you can imagine, in a tribal society. And this brought out in him a relentless, fearless warrior, that he was so, just in people all striking with his skills, that his father had to come back to claim him again. His father's like, no, you are my son. Kabhi khushi, kabhi gham. It's one of those that seriously, this is what happens. His father comes and reclaims him because he thinks, wow, oh my God, everybody rates Antara. So Antara ibn Shaddad. And he passionate. You know what else? Is he's iconic for his love story with who becomes his wife. He's one of those love stories that sees it through. Most of them, they just die in tragedies. But his was a realization. He loved, she was from the same village and kind of related differently to him. The love of his life, Abla. Abla. You see, the ancient Arabs, they had these proper, pure Arab names. You gotta love them, huh? We don't really, actually, maybe some Arabs have it today, I don't know. It's definitely not a Desi kind of name, Abla. But and he passionately loved her, but because initially he was disowned, he couldn't marry her or anything. But later on, when he's claimed back by his tribe and he becomes the pride of his tribe, and he does marry, and he's always in love with her right to the end. And his mu'allaqat, his famous from the top mu'allaqat, those poems that used to be stuck on the Kaaba, is his. And it begins, هل غادر الشعراء من متردمي أم هل عرفت الدار بعد توهمي. Allah. He begins by saying that, have the poets, have they left? And they disagree. Does it mean, have they left anything for us to say, or does it mean, have they left a place? And أم هل عرفت الدار بعد توهمي. He's speaking about the place, and he says, what was it? He speaks about her. أيا دار عبلة بالجواء تكلمي. أيا دار عبلة بالجواء تكلمي. عمي صباحا. It's been a while. He says, إمي صباحا دار عبلة واسلمي. That's it. عمي صباحا دار عبلة واسلمي. So in his poem, he's addressing Abla, the love of his life. And so anyway, he's this absolute Don warrior. legend, and he's got all his poems are just about, you know, when they're whenever there's a war breaks out, everybody says, you know, people say, yeah, Antara. They say, yeah, Antara, you know, come on. And he turns up and he does all this fighting and he's ruthless. So in his time, what happens is there's this guy known as Al-Asad al Rahees. He's known as the Lion. What a name, huh? Known as the Lion. And that's because he apparently used to go hunt lions. I mean, what? How more egotistic does it get that if you hunt lions? And that's what he used to do. So he's proper rated, as in feared. Sorry, not as in feared, as in he has notoriety. So what he starts is one day this guy starts a taxing system. So he has I don't know, one of the roads or something, and he sets up this taxing system where he ties this kind of ram or a sheep or something there, and he says anybody who goes past this has to leave with it a certain amount of tax, and if they don't, putar. He says if they don't, then and watch, man, they don't just call me the Asad for no reason. So people obviously, and then without a doubt, he obviously off with one or two heads, puts the fear of God into people. So everybody puts this tax, and so, you know, this now spreads like this rumor like wildfire. So what happens is, you know, you know, in each story you have that kind of that character. So in you have Abla's fiance, who never got to marry her, but he's always has this jealousy of Antara. So he comes to Abla, telling that, you know, her ex basically, saying, "Oh, have you heard about this guy Asad al Rahees? And oh my God, you know, like, nobody can handle him. Even Antara can't deal with, you know, it just lights a bit of the bit of the fuel, a bit of the flame." It happens in all eras, people. It happens in all eras. So now, so at this point, so Abla thinks, right, okay, so she mentions it to Antara that, oh my God, this guy is robbing people, and people are saying he's the most feared warrior in the Arabian plains, and, you know, and she kind of says it in a way. She doesn't say to him that you go and fight him, but she says it in this way with this concern. And obviously, man, Antara was a warrior, but at heart he was a lover. So he has this love for, you know, Abla. So he's like, yar, huh? He's like, you know, this is turned into kuch kuch hota hai. You know, there's that. I need to. That how can the love of my life be preoccupied with these thoughts? So he says, you know what? Where is this person? Let me go. So what he does is he says to Abla, come with me. So he takes her and takes, I think, just one person with him. I can't remember. I think his own brother or something. And he turns up to this place. And what do you know? Asad isn't there. He's not there. So he turns up and he sees that, you know, he sees this what the ram or the sheep, whatever it was, and Asad's wife, he sees their tent or wherever it was where they lived, and he calls her out. And he says, "Where's Asad?" She says, "He's not here." And it's a small world; they all seem to know each other. So he seems to know his wife, and because she's the sister of one of his friends or something. So he says to her that, you know what, in their words, that he's dodged a bullet, because I was gonna sort him out, man. You know, this one not nice. So he says, okay, what we'll do instead is he gets that sheep and he slaughters the sheep and he says, cook it for us. And she cooks it. The good old days, huh? turn it up and you say, I've slaughtered your sheep, now cook it for us. And the woman says, yes, of course. So she cooks it, and they all sit and they eat it, including the wife of this person, Asad. So they eat it, and then he goes and he just says to her that, tell him that, you better baz aa jao, you better kind of pull your act together. So this guy comes back, and remember, he's this rated, oh, everybody fears me, I collect taxes from people, and he's humiliated. He's humiliated. So what happens is he rallies his tribe. He says, let's go get Antara. So they say to him, look, but that's not really fair. Antara just came on his own, and he brought his wife with him. So, you taking a whole tribe to fight this one guy who turned up on his own. So why don't you just go on your own? Oh, problem. But to be fair, Asad was also this guy who used to claim that, oh, I'm a fearless warrior. So he says, fair enough. Chalo. He says, this math's also working, this mathematics. So he says, I'm going to take my wife and go there. So he takes his wife and goes there. And, clash of the titans. Allah. These are the stories that were, a generation later reached the Prophet, by the way, and the companions. These are what they would have not only grown up around, would have known in their times. So Asad and Antara go toe to toe. That's it. And they start fighting. And obviously he comes out, they've got their swords and he's horseback. But it doesn't actually last that long. Antara manages to swiftly drag him, throw him off his horse, and as he falls, he really hurts himself. So here, that's it. He's hurt himself, and because he's hurt himself, he's caught, and Antara catches him. He ties him up, and he says, "Okay, well, I've captured you." And then, obviously, he's in that day and age, he's captured his wife. But then, because he knows his wife, it's the sister of his friend, he lets her go. But he's got this person. You're my captive. So his wife, Asad's wife, pleads to Antara. She says, look, you know me through such and such. Please let my husband go. And, he made a mistake, and let him go. And, we call it, I'm sure he'll call it quits. Can this just be water under a bridge? So Antara, he says, well, says, Yar, there's nothing wrong in being noble. The nobility, as one of our beloveds had said, the nobility. So he says, fine. And he says, you know what? Okay. And he lets him go, Asad. Now, Asad goes back to his tribe, humiliated. And he's from this tribe, At-Tai, the Ta'i, the famous Hatim At-Tai, the very wealthy person was from the same tribe, Banu Tai. Now, he's humiliated. Think about it. This is this guy who was unofficially collecting taxes, deemed to be the most fearless warrior in that region of Arabia. And not only does he go to teach a lesson, he gets battered, held captive, and then released at the behest of his wife. His wife, like a woman, had to plead, and he got let go. This is how humiliating it was for him. So, you see, but this is the thing. Fa'fu wasfa'u. But it's too difficult, man. This one, the nafs, the ego. So he thinks, no, I'm not going to let this slide. So what he does is, on an occasion, he gathers a little gang, and they raid. Because remember, Arabia, even in the Prophet's time and pre-Islam, was a very raiding society, where it was that kind of Viking-like lifestyle. They used to raid each other. He raids Bani al-Ubs, that tribe of Ubs, which is Antara's tribe, and especially the part where he lives. And he raids it, and they take the animals. And when they would raid at a time when they know a lot of men wouldn't be there. And they take certain things and take captives. And guess who he takes as a captive? Abla, the wife of Antara. So this one, too much, man. Too much. Antara obviously comes back. His tribe call him, because people in that day and age, they would go for days as well on a journey. So he comes back, and he's like, what the hell has happened here? They're like, they raided us, they took our livestock, took the sheep, they took this, they took captives, and amongst the captives, they took women, and amongst the women, they took your wife. Allah, Allah, Allah. So this one, eruption time, man. So you get that, Antara turns into the Incredible Hulk that moment. He takes his brother with him. He takes just 1-2 people, and they set off for Bani Tay, that tribe where Asad is. And what ensues is a ruthless little battle. Antara smashing, slaughtering people that came in his way. And it's not long before he catches this Asad al Rahees, catches him, beats him, defeats him, and then ties him and is about to execute him. So at this point, when he's about to execute him, once again, his wife is pleading, please leave him. But this time, Antara's like, no. He took Abla. Obviously, he rescues Abla. Abla, he's got her, rescues her, releases the people, the captives. Now, one of the people suggests to him, look, instead of killing him, why don't you they used to have this tactic where they would, say tactic, it's very, very inhumane. They would blind the other person. And he says, look, why don't we just blind him and leave him? Let him wander, let him suffer, let him be, like, that's it. He's blind. What can he do? And Antara, he's undecided, but then he agrees. He says, okay. And they blind this Asad al Rahees. And he returns and he lives a normal, Antara goes back, he resumes his normal life, he has even more glory, people rate him, and he lives on. And this Asad becomes an outcast, blind, disheveled, has, obviously he's kind of outcasted by his own tribe. He brought so much grief onto them. So he just wanders, and he just has like this one servant with him that sees to his stuff. Even his wife has left him. So obviously, because this guy is just a cause for calamity. Now, this person becomes so ridden with this thirst for revenge. He thinks, I have nothing left in this life except I just want revenge from Antara. That's the only motivating factor I have left in life. And years go by. He just has this one slave with him. Years have gone by. They say 2 decades later, as a blind man living as a kind of tramp, he hears one day that Antara is passing this particular route. So he finds out, he sends his slave to ascertain, is this true? And he says, and he tells the slave, look, I have just one thing left in life, and that is vengeance. I need to avenge myself and get revenge from Antara. It's my only purpose. And it become that rotten, that bit. This was so his servant says, okay, fine, I'll help you, and his slave, and he says, yes, this is the path. I found out they are coming. So he himself lies in wait. He kind of sets not a trap, but he gets a vantage point, and he just sits there in anticipation. And the days go by, and he has this spear with this poison in it. I mean, they dip it in poison, and he waits and waits. And then as the days go by, this one day he hears some travelers trotting along on their horses, and he can hear them, and it's Antara's voice. So this is the moment. And what he does is he has that spear dipped in poison, and he launches it, and it pierces Antara. Antara falls off his horse. His wife was with him, Abla. This is now 20 years later, and he has 1-2 other people with him. And Antara falls. They obviously they're not so sure at the time who's done this. They just see, they recognize this is a fatal blow, and this is the end of Antara. So they just hurry to take him back to his tribe, and these are his final moments. And with that, he comes to pass and is the death of this legend of pre-Islamic Arabia. This Asad al Rahees becomes so that this was his life's goal, and it had burnt him out within, completely rotten with this one goal for vengeance. He obviously runs from there, and he spreads this news, I've killed Antara, and he makes these poems, and you know, he reaches Islam. He's not, because he lives on to a very old age, and he reaches the Prophet. And in the 9th year of Hijri, there's a waft, a delegation from Bani Tay, and amongst them comes who? Asad al Rahees, this blind old man who was so burnt out within with this poison of hatred. He comes to the Prophet amongst the people, and there's this other great warrior from Tay known as Zayd al Khayl, Zayd of the horses. He comes with him, who's this huge, like a giant of a man. And the Prophet welcomes them, treats them very well. And that Zayd al Khayl, the Prophet actually called him, and this was, you know, from the amazing, the kind of the kind of enchanting manner of the Prophet, that when he would speak to people, especially with names, he would put it in a way that would be really endearing and chanting as well at the same time. So when the person said, obviously he was known, his name was Zayd al Khayl, Zayd of the horses, the Prophet called him Zayd al Khair, Zayd of goodness. And you know, in Arabic it has that endearment. So this is at that time, and they've come and they embrace Islam, but Asad al Rahees doesn't. He says, see, he's too burnt out at this time. And he knows it. He says that this is a man, his comments about the Prophet are very popular. He says, this is a man who will own. He says, لَيَمْلِكُ رَقَبَةَ الْرِقَابَ الْعَرَبِ. He says, this is a man, he could tell. He says that this is a man who I can tell by just being in his presence that he will go on to rule all of Arabia. And he says, but I won't let him. Check this out. He says, but I won't let him rule me. And so what he does is he leaves that delegation from there, and he doesn't go back. He heads towards Sham. He says, I'm going to leave the Arabian Peninsula. And it's transmitted that he shaves his head and becomes a Christian. It's interesting that shaving the head was seen in early Islam as a sign of almost counter-Muslim. It's interesting that later on it became almost a cultural practice of Muslims. But in early Islam and in the Prophet's time, shaving the head was often a practice done by people who did not like Islam. And or a person may have shaved it for the pilgrimage, but often that was one of the symbolisms of that. So at this person, he leaves and he goes, and this is the, you know, this where a person burns his own soul by hatred in life. And it doesn't matter what, even if you see goodness in front of you after that, or you see anything, you're too burnt out. You know, you get those people too bitter. And that's it's a fascinating story. I just I don't know why. I suppose it was relevant and it was interesting, and I thought let's share it. Maybe some of you might find it interesting and do your own research.